what is web development? Web development is simply the process of building, designing, and maintaining websites and web applications that run in a browser. So basically, you have to build, you then have to design what you've built, just like a real house, and then you have to be able to maintain it when things break down. You have to be able to maintain, fix it, and all of those things. And typically, a website or a web application sits in a browser. We all know what a browser is. We have our Google Chrome, we have our Firefox, and so on and so forth. So I always like to explain things with analogies because I feel like it helps to really understand break it down in simpler terms, basically. So think of a website like a restaurant. HTML is our structure. So a restaurant is a building, right? We have the walls, we have the pillars, we have the tables, we have the ceiling and all of those things, right? So we have that physical structure. CSS is for designing our restaurant. So the interior decorations, the choice of your painting, the types of furnitures, do you want to put little plants around and stuff like that, just everything decoration. And then JavaScript is for interaction. So when you employ waiters, sorry, people are waiting. I think some people need to be added. Yeah. So JavaScript is for interaction. When you employ waiters or kitchen staff, they then start to prepare meals, move around, serve people and stuff like that. I don't know if that makes sense. Now, HTML, CSS, JavaScript is for front end. Front end is basically what the users can see. So you are seeing my screen now. This is the front end. The back end is your data and your server. So this is where, for example, where the meals would be made. The customers cannot see this in the same way your users cannot see this back end. It is where all of the logic and all of the structure is going to be stored. Now, I talked about a website versus a web application because I feel like this also confuses people. We said web development in general is the process of building, designing, and maintaining websites and web applications. So what is the difference between a website and a web application? And it's very simple. Basically, a website is more static or dynamic with content, but you cannot necessarily edit those contents. You can't go in and change something. You can't update something. You can't delete something on a website. It's just content that will be served to you right in front of you. Just as you are looking at my screen now, I'm interacting. I cannot necessarily go in and edit, make changes, or do anything. While web applications is very similar, the similarity between both of them is that word web, because they both run on the web. The web is basically the internet, your browser, right? So a web application, it's still on the web, on your browser, but you can't necessarily edit the content or delete stuff or update stuff. While a web application, it's more like a software that runs on the web as well, still on your browser, but you can perform certain operations like edits, deleting, updating things, and so on and so forth. Now, the primary purpose of websites is just to serve content, like a blog. You go on a blog and you just read information, or you go on a company's website just to read about the company, the services they provide, get their contact information. You see, it's literally just read only. You can't necessarily do anything. The biggest thing you can do there is maybe they can keep a contact information form for you to fill, and that's about it. But you can't really edit or update anything. While a web application, which is basically a software on the web, has more interactive functionality, like social media. Now you can delete your posts, you can update your posts, you can go into your banking app and you can log in, you can withdraw, you can send money, you can, change stuff on your profile and so on and so forth. So I don't know if it makes sense now. On a website, you can't do all of those things. You can't delete any information you see there. But on a web application, you can do that. I also gave some examples again. Blogs, company websites, people's portfolios, While for web applications, something like Facebook now, you can go there, update your profile picture, delete it if you like, delete a post you've made 5 years ago, and so on and so forth. So for websites, the primary technologies are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript for front end, because you don't even really need a back end for websites, to be honest. While for web applications, it's still front end, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, but you now need a back end for it, because you have to keep your data somewhere and serve your data to the front end from somewhere. And people can also delete and edit, like I said, for web applications. So you have to be able to keep that data somewhere where they can go in and edit it and update whatever they have edited or deleted there. So I don't know if the similarities and differences are clearer, but this is the basic overview and understanding of a website versus a web application. Next, I like to give analogies, like I said. So think of a website like a book. I have a book in my hands. I literally can just read from that book. Literally, that's what you can do with a book. You can't go in and edit what someone has written on like a physical book. You can't delete unless you want to tear the book. But I mean, that's all you can do. So that's like a website on your browser. It's just like a book on your browser. You can just read. While a web application, it's more like a digital book. You can now write on that book. That you can post. Maybe you can make a post, for example, Facebook. You can make a post. You can edit a post you've made. You can delete a post you've made. You can now interact some more. And this typically requires some sort of back end. So this web development covers both websites and web-based applications, depending on the complexity of your project. Now, understanding the internet and how websites work on the internet or web applications work on the internet. I'm using these terminologies interchangeably. So what is the internet? The internet is basically like a global network of computers. So you have different computers globally all over the world. And these computers are able to communicate with each other. They are able to send and receive information all around the world. That's basically what the internet is. All of this long story, long and short of it is that it's basically computers all over the world communicating with each other, sending and receiving messages. Again, the analogy or the example, think of the internet as a massive highway, like a road, where cars are moving up and down between different cities, right? Now, these cars, while they are moving, they'll stop at different buildings on this highway. People will visit different buildings based on the address. Oh, I live in this place. My address is here. So you drive your car down the highway, stop at my address, right? And visit me or do whatever you want to do and continue driving. That's basically the internet. The cars here are like data being transported on the highway, which is the internet, right? And the cities or the different locations are your computers. Your computers are basically connected to this highway where cars are traveling, where data is traveling, and people can stop and visit, which is your URL. I don't know if you've ever heard about the terminology URL, but it's basically that HTTPS www.facebook.com. That's your URL. That's your address. So if I'm going now and I want to visit the Facebook address, which is the URL, I'll go to www.facebook.com. And this is how this whole communication just works. Computers are all over the world and they have addresses, which is URLs, and people just visit these URLs. That's the long and short of this. This is just the whole concept of the internet. So even your website will also become a URL, just like www.facebook.com, and people can visit from their computers all over the world. They can visit. Now, how websites work. This is the client-server model. And when you hear client-server, client is the front end and server is the back end. So the server would serve something to the client. So this is the model. You visit a website, right? Your browser is usually your client. And your browser is where the users would first land. When they land on the browser, they will type your address, maybe facebook.com or your website.com, whatever the address of your website is, they will type that into a browser. Now, the browser is the client. The browser would send a request to the server. Basically, the client would send a request to the server. Hey, somebody type this address into me and they are looking for this information. The server would take that request that the browser has sent and send back details concerning what the person has requested for. So usually, let's use your Facebook as an example now. When you go on Facebook and maybe you search somebody's profile, remember all of this is happening on your browser. Maybe you go on Google Chrome and you type facebook.com, you get into Facebook and you search somebody's name. Maybe you type John Doe on Facebook. Your browser would take that John Doe, take it to the server. The server would see, hey, this person is requesting for John Doe, and bring you back John Doe's profile. And that's when you see it on your screen. You see that person's profile on your screen. I don't know if that makes sense, if it's all coming together now. So when the server brings it back, the browser will take back what the server has brought back and render that on your screen. And that's how websites basically work, or web applications. So the analogy or the example is like ordering a food. You place an order. The restaurant, who is the kitchen staff or the chef or the server, that would prepare the meal and then deliver it to you. Basically, you receive your meal and you eat it. That's just the whole idea. You place your requests from the browser sends it to the back end. The back end, which is the server, takes it, processes it, and sends it back to the front end to your browser, and you see the content you want to see. You consume the content you want. Now, key technologies in front-end web development. Again, remember I said web development has different parts. We have front-end, which is what the user can see, what you and I can see. We have the back-end, which is where all of the data, all of the logic, all of the functionality, your database and everything is stored. Users cannot see that part. And then full stack is bringing your front end and your back end together. So some key technologies in this web development, we have HTML for front end, particularly we are talking now. HTML basically defines the structures of your web pages. HTML is like the skeleton. There's no necessarily any style or beauty to it. It's just the structure, the frame. CSS is now to add beauty, to add style, designs. CSS is like adding clothes, adding accessories, adding colors, adding, makeup, so on and so forth. JavaScript is for adding interactivity and functionality. So this is like the muscles and the brains that would allow you move, walk, make movements, everything functioning together, blood flowing and all of that. Git and GitHub is not a programming language, but it's very important. While you are trying to build a career in software development, especially when you end up getting a job in this field, you would find out that sometimes you are not even working with people that are sitting down in the same office with you. You are working with people all over the world. So how do you think when you are working on a project together with them, you can share what you have worked on with them without a flash drive, because they are not there in front of you? So it's not a case where you can put what you have done on a flash drive and give it to them. So you need a way for them to be able to see what you have done and for you to be able to see what they have done. This is where Git and GitHub comes in. It's just for collaboration. And you basically take what you have done, push it somewhere online, and your team members can get it. And vice versa, you can also get what they have done down to your own system locally. So you see how really interesting this is. This is like the beauty of the web and software development and how all of these things interact. Now, understanding front end versus back end development. Front end, again, like we said, just a recap, is the client side where you can see, as you can see my screen now, you are looking at the front end. However, this works from the back. We do not know. We do not want to know front end, what you can see. The main technologies that make up the front end: HTML, CSS for design, JavaScript for interactivity. Now, Back end, we said it's the server side. You cannot see this side. Basically, the back end would handle data processing, storage, which is your database, any other logic you need on the server side, the back end would handle this. So basically, what makes up the back end? Databases, server side languages, APIs. Don't worry yourself about any of these things. While we progress, if you are patient enough to stay through this, the entire program, you would understand a lot more what all of these things means. They are not magic. They are very, very clear concepts. Now, let's deep dive into core web technologies. Again, this is just a recap. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Remember, HTML is for the front end. This is your structure to build your frame. Stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it's the standard language used to create web pages. Any website you go to, any place you go to, anything you go to, whether Facebook, Instagram, HTML is there. It is the core language. You cannot go to a browser. Anything you see on the browser, it's HTML doing that. HTML, any text you see, HTML is rendering that. You cannot create anything on the internet, on the browser without HTML. It's literally the blueprint for the structure of your house. It's the foundation. Now, a basic HTML example or structure. From next week, we will start to look at these practical codes. So we have the HTML tags. We call these open and close arrows. We call them tags. And we have the head tag. We have the body tag. And inside the head and the body stays inside of the HTML tag. So this is the basic structure. For anytime you want to start an HTML document, you have to follow this structure. Next week, we will look at what this really means in practical, or what this looks like in practical. CSS is the second technology for front end. Now, CSS is adding style and beauty to your page on your browser, right? So, for example, this page you are looking at did not look like this ordinarily. It was just plain white with black text. I had to add in the blue. I had to add in the green borders around and everything else. I had to put in the style of the font style I wanted and the font size and everything. That is CSS. CSS is used to style your HTML elements. So all of these elements like H1, these are all called elements. H1P, they are all called elements. You would use CSS to style this. So instead of welcome to my website, just looking, white background, black text, you can make this text pink, you can make it blue, you can make it any color using CSS. You can change the font size, you can change the font family, you can change the background color, you can add images, you can do anything with CSS. It's the full-on interior decoration of your HTML house. Now, this is the basic syntax. This example, I'm just showing us trying to add a background color to our body, just like this. This my background being blue. This is it. So you say the body of your document. So you have the head on top, you have your body in the center, and you have your footer below. So the body, you want the body to be light blue, for example. You can use CSS to do that. You want your font family, so your fonts on your text, you want it to be a different type of font family, you can do that. You want some certain elements to have a different color from the background, you want them to be in the center of the page, you can do all of that with CSS. And then we have JavaScript for interactivity. So for example, this slide I have added, JavaScript can do this. You see all of this transition, this smooth way the thing changes on the screen from left to right. JavaScript can do all of this. It makes your web page more interactive. HTML is for structure, CSS is for design, but that's not just enough when you are talking from a user experience perspective, which is very, very important. JavaScript is for interaction. So maybe slideshows, when things are sliding on your page, when things are transitioning beautifully, this is what JavaScript can do, all of the dynamics on your page. Now, this is a basic example of JavaScript. Here, we are just getting an element from our HTML page, and we are adding a functionality with JavaScript. So when I click on this part of my page, I want to show this text. You clicked the heading, that's what I want to show. That's basically what these two lines of code mean. Basically, you take the elements and you add the functionality you want to add on it. So anytime I click on this part of my page, so let's say if I click on this heading, it should show me this, you clicked the heading, something like that. JavaScript can do all of those. Then we have Git and GitHub, which is for version control and collaboration. Git is a version control system that tracks changes in your code. I told you that when you are working with different people, you need to have a way to push your code to online for them to receive your code, and to also collect their own code. Any changes they've made to their code, you need a way to get theirs as well. This is basically what Git does. Git is a very robust technology that can manage all of this, and it was built with so much intelligence. When we get into Git, you're really going to see the power of Git and how important it really is. So basically, Git is like save and undo buttons. You know, when you say Control S, you save something. When you say Control Y, you undo something you've done. But on the internet, for every developer, you can use Git to take your changes online for people to receive. You can use Git to bring people's changes. You can use Git to undo a change you've made. Maybe you realize that you made a mistake and you've already put it online. You can use Git to undo that, and so much more. It's really powerful. Basic Git command. We have Git init to initialize a repository. A repository is like a house online for your code. So you use Git init to initialize that house online where people will go to get your code, the changes you have made to your code. Then Git add dots. This basically helps you add all of the changes. It will just collect all the new changes you have made to your code. Git commit -m with a message with all of the changes you've added. Commit is going to save those changes for you, and then Git push, we push those changes to the online house you created. Once it's there, anybody that has access can see it, get every change you did, work on it. You can also get back their own changes. So there's so many Git commands for different functionalities, but it's really powerful. It's almost one of the most important things here. Then summary and what we'll be looking at next week. So we talked about the internet, how it's a network where computers communicate with each other. A website is built using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We talked about what is front end. Front end is what the users see, while back end is where the data and the logic, which is like the powerhouse, the brain, that's the back end. The users cannot see this. We talked about Git and GitHub, that they help developers keep track and collaborate together between each other, especially when they are not working from the same physical location. Now, next week, we'll start building our first HTML. This is going to be real practical. So if you can, I would advise that you get a laptop and access. Obviously, you have access to the internet. That's why you are here. This week, we didn't necessarily need our laptop because it was just all talking and explaining the basic concepts. But next week, it would be good if you can have your laptop hands-on and try to do some of the labs that we'll be doing next week. Because again, we learn more by, doing. And that's basically the end. The self-practice task. So for the rest of the week, you can go and research more about the internet. Just read about the internet. So you would literally see all of these things I've said. You can research more about HTML, like a basic HTML file, since we'll be talking about HTML mostly next week. So just research about HTML, what an HTML file looks like, what is an HTML element. Just do some research, because that's always good to do. Then find real life examples of things that you can relate. So go to different websites, look at the text, look at the designs, be like, okay, I understand now. This is what she was talking about. This is mostly HTML. The color I can see here is CSS. The slide shows is JavaScript. So just do some simple research. But yeah, we've come to the end of the class, and I hope you understand like the basics of what we are talking about and what we are expecting next week. If you have any questions, you can leave it on the chat. I'll be uploading this video on YouTube if you just need to go back and listen to what we've talked about. Next week is going to be a lot more interesting because we'll be doing the real practical. So just come with your laptops. And yeah, that's it for this week. I just wanted to keep it light and simple and not bombard us too much. But yeah, do you have any questions? Our session is about to end, so yeah.